So here you can see two things. Geophysical fluid dynamics, you understand that, okay, there are applications to that. And because the title itself says UN Ocean Decade, so mainly it is going to be about the applications that I'm going to talk about, the oceanic applications, not atmospheric so much. And you might have seen the Ocean Decade related something when Manita gave, in the beginning, some introduction. So how this event is also endorsed under that. So I will talk about the Ocean Decade, and then I will say something on what we do at INCOIS, that is direct applications of GFD, that is addressing these Ocean Decade challenges. So this is just a background, and it is the slide that is something that you can say that it is pre-COVID era slide. And then in the year that you have to see that it is 2017, and there is a significance to that. If you understand that the Sustainable Development Goals, the word that you have come across, those were adopted in the year 2016. And understanding that, okay, we are going towards the tipping point of climate. So morning we talked about that, okay, these 2 weeks we are going to orient towards climate. So understanding the role of oceans in governing the planet's climate, it is understood that if we need to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, then it is not sufficient to just observe a day every year for ocean or particular month or even a year. For example, 2023 was the UN year of millets, dedicated to the disappearing the species of many millet species. So it was then understood that a whole decade will be required, because we need to break the silos, not within the researcher communities, but also that all 9 billion people living on the planet need to understand the importance of the ocean. So when you as a researcher say something to the policymakers, you want to create a generation that those policymakers should be able to understand your language. They should be able to understand what you are trying to say. So we need to have long time, and we need to create that generation. And seeing the very young faces here in this room, that will be the generation at the end of the UN Ocean Decade will be, as a professionals, you will be acting, you will be working with your age peers on the policymakers or other realms. So that is the importance. And that is why the Ocean Decade, it was then understood that we need to start. So 4 years before the formal beginning in the 2021, it was resolution was adopted, and 2021 onwards, it was decided that we'll have the whole decade identify for the ocean. So again, the pandemic nobody actually planned for. So first 2 years of the decade was more or less on the virtual realm. So understanding the conferences and all the meetings and so on. Last year onwards, the activities have started picking up. So even in case you think that it is 2024 already and no need to have FOMO, because the activities are starting up now. And that is the reason that just last month, there was a first ever global Ocean Decade conference that was hosted in Barcelona, Spain. So that is what, you should not be feeling that a lot has already passed. The actual Ocean Decade activities, boots on ground, it is starting now. So what is Ocean Decade? So now, after the planning and then post COVID, the activities have actually, as I said, started picking up. This is the snapshot that gives you the idea what is the reach globally. There are many programs and projects that have been identified. And when it comes to the prediction of the ocean also, it is very much of that. So you can see that Ocean Decade is identified under themes that is called Ocean Decade Challenges. And there are 10 of them, right? And one of them, it is also say ocean literacy. So literacy not only for the illiterate people, but also for the policymakers who are illiterate in terms of the scientific terms, the curriculum that we have to change for that, because the whole generation, ocean generation that we have to create. And ocean prediction also, that is one of the things. Resilience, it is another theme, and so on. So sitting in this room talking about geophysical fluid dynamics, when you talk about data or when you talk about predictability, when you talk about blue economy applications, when you think like that, when you realign or align, your research is already aligned towards those applications, it is all actually very much on the lines of what Ocean Decade is trying to achieve by 2030. And why 2030? If you go back to the SDGs, then the goal or the target for the SDGs to be achieved for every country or as a community and so on, it has been also kept as a 2030. So that is the vision 2030. So instead of creating another layer or duplication after creating SDGs, this is very much in line in that. So that's why I have just listed 3 of the ocean decade challenges, which I felt that might be of interest of what you do. And here you can see that if you address one of the ocean decade challenges or the slated outcome, then automatically you address not only one but multiple of the SDGs. So when it comes to ocean, usually people think about SDG 14, say life under water. But then that is not only that. When you do better predictability, when you actually manage your, say, fishery resources in like a scientific manner, you also address another SDG that is called zero hunger, because now more people can be fed in a more sustainable way, and so on. So this is something that you might totally think that out of the realm of what you do, but in the time when you grow in your careers, you will understand that to get the grants for the research, to create that kind of perception so that such funds are made available, the society as a whole need to perceive that, okay, these things are important. What we do, it is important. And that's why this sensitization, it is important. And now you will be knowing some things, and then you will go back, you will try to percolate that among your peers and colleagues. That is how we do that. So we do that within ourselves as well as we do that outside the large part of the society, because any like a country or topic, if you take, the researchers are very limited numbers. We already know that, right? And why we need to do this now? Because more and more countries are actually like talking about this term that is called blue economy. And blue economy, it is a term that is distinguished from brown economy. Brown economy is that everything that we did on land, and we want to avoid the things that we consider as a mistake, and we don't want to repeat that when it comes to the ocean. So that's why we need to do things differently. And that is this is the time, because many of the countries have started thinking on those aspects. Again, why here? Why we are doing this here? Why we are talking about this here? So I did not draw this circle, but then you can understand that it has its own importance. When we talk about sensitizing, global population, we need to focus on where, like, the population is concentrated. And again, when you do the same for the, like, when we talk about ocean realm, when we talk about the Indian Ocean region, so a third of the global population, it is actually living there. And these are not developed countries. They are having aspirations of, upping their blue economies or addressing their overpopulation or the livelihood concerns by harnessing resources from the ocean. And then when they do that, things are going to get complicated for us as a researchers, because the kind of practices that they put, if they are not scientific, it is going to be more complications, just like the climate complications in predictability now that we see, right? So everything that we do, it is going to add to the complexity in terms of science. And on the other hand, if you see that, again, Indian Ocean region or South Asia, how you want to address it, this map, it is not justifying the kind of, like, size of the countries with reference to their populations, right? So there is a huge gap between the kind of like a human resource that we have and what kind of sensitization that we need to do. And we means not only researchers, because if you see that when it comes to the proportion per capita ocean scientists, and I'm talking about ocean, but then I am sure that the similar things, because this came from the ocean science report, but then similar situation would be in atmospheric sciences also, and many other sciences, right, which are usually not considered as a first career choice in the developing countries. So this is what happens. And obviously governments also need to up their ante. So here you can see that, and this is not the percentage of the GDP that the governments put, for the ocean science. This is percentage of the total fund that overall, whatever R&D funds that each country have, what percentage of that fund that goes towards ocean science. So you can see that, like, this scale that goes from the hardly up to 5%. That also 5% of the R&D fund not about their national GDP also. So you understand there is a huge gap on what we want to exploit and how much we are ready to invest behind the sciences. So when as a better forecaster you want to have the better computation or the resources. So this is the where we actually have to pitch properly to the funding agencies that this gap needs to be filled properly. And like I talked about the DCC IOR, so the organization or the newly set up structure under the Ocean Decade that I come from, it is a geographic in nature. So it is Decade Collaborative Center for the Indian Ocean region. But then we address all the 10 Ocean Decade challenges. Similarly, there are other DCCs, for example, DCC Ocean Predict, whom with we work. They are thematic in nature. So this is something relevant like what you try to do here, what you try to achieve here. So DCC Ocean Predict, what they do, their work area or their scope, it is global, but with the only one theme, that better prediction of the ocean. That is how the geographic one and thematic DCCs join hands together. So ultimately, come up with the surveys for the countries, like especially the small island developing countries and LDCs, least developed countries. What are the requirements? What kind of programs that need to be, scholarships need to be developed? How we can do better, deployments of buoys. For example, India deployed one with the collaboration with the Seychelles. So that is okay because that the swell waves that we have coming from the Antarctic, that is hitting Seychelles first. So ultimately, we can forecast better for the northern parts of the Indian Ocean also, as well as better predictions for Seychelles. So this is how the countries and these decentralized structures work together to achieve the aspects. Something why INCOIS is doing these things. So INCOIS is a very unique organization, and it stands for Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services. I missed to give the full form earlier, but it is, you can understand that in the USA, the role that NOAA plays for the ocean and atmosphere together, in India, two different agencies are playing that. So we have the Weather Department established in British era, and INCOIS that was established hardly 25 years ago. But then India is the only country that has the Earth Science Ministry. So both these organizations come under that, and INCOIS is doing only operational aspects. And you can see that some of the products, when we talk about ocean predictability, using the better forecasting models. So this is what we do. INCOIS is also a unique organization because now when it comes to UN system, there is something called IOC, Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, and there is something called WMO, so World Meteorological Organization. These two are the apex bodies, and the joint their governing body, it identifies some of the centers as a regional centers. So for example, for tsunami prediction, so regional tsunami service providers. So INCOIS is already that. But being an oceanographic organization, it also got recently accreditation for the RMSC, Regional Meteorological Service Center. So ocean meteorology, it is an entirely different thing, and that is what we do. So some of the products and examples where we want to address these ocean decade challenges with such products. And you can see that we have the very elaborated setup of the models. Some of the colleagues are there, they are going to talk about this week and next week. They'll be talking about these models, how we run those, and then ultimately how do we improve those with observations. They are the seagoing people, so they also will tell you about those experience. And when we try to achieve that, okay, basin level, we have already done that. Now we are moving towards the coastal applications. That again is going to address other ocean decade challenges, for example, pollution related. You want to go for the dispersal models. So you need to understand that, okay, how the bathymetry is going to affect for the dispersal and so on. And we try to keep our products at the, very comparable to the international standards. And we regularly report to that also. So this is one last slide that to address to that. So with that, I think with about 15 seconds spare, I kept my presentation as short as possible so that not to overrun the time. And if any questions, I'll be happy to take. Else we can always interact during coffee breaks and so on. Thank you.